Hey everyone, and welcome to another exciting game from the Tales from the Table Reproductive Rights Charity Drive. We've got some amazing folks joining us this time around, and they'll get to introduce themselves in a second. But I wanted to take them in and just say thank you for coming and joining us for this, and for all the support that you guys have been throwing our way from the beginning of this up until now, both to people who have donated, people who have been part of our games, playing, running them, helping me set these events up. Just thank you to everyone. With that said, we're gonna focus mostly on this tonight because I'm really excited for this. So we're gonna be starting a two-part episode tonight of Veil of the Void. And with that, I'm gonna pass it over so we can start doing introductions. I guess actually it probably makes sense if I start first since I'm already talking. Hi, I'm Drake, aka Lion. You can find me at the Lion Knight 42 on pretty much any social media, but you're here, so you know that already. Tonight, I'm going to be playing the prototype Blade Dancer R313453, or more commonly known as Release. And I'll throw it off to Jeff.
Hi, I'm Jeff. Not on Twitter, but I'll be Banana Arms in the Twitch chat. Today I'm playing the Elan Taldir, Space Elf, fairly old, receding hairline. It's going to be fun.
Jack, why don't we go to you?
Yes, hello. I am Jack. You may remember me from my own channel, twitch.tv/The People's Ascension. By the time this is live, by the time this is aired, my July month of one-shots will be over. I'm hoping that was a successful charity drive. But by this time, I should be moving on to season 4 of RPGs Uncovered. RPGs Uncovered is a series dedicated to showing just how quick and easy it can be to learn a new TTRPG. And this time we are looking at Upriver, Downriver. Hopefully, I'm talking in the future right now. But that's going to be super exciting. I will have more details on that on my own Twitch page, and you can follow me on Twitter at PPLS Ascension, because the whole thing never fits. And I have my own Discord and all that, but you can find me elsewhere. For now, I'm excited to be playing The Vengeful Consensus. Who's left? Zach.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jack. My name is Zach Walsh. I run a podcast called Schedule for Launch. You can find me at Twitter at Schedule for Launch, where I talk with indie creators about all the cool stuff that they're doing. It's a lot of fun. I'm super thankful to be joining all these guys here. And today I'll be playing Shroomy Mushy Mushkin, the Topikin Berserker, which is kind of new. It's a very new. We're going to be doing some playtesting, so we'll see how it goes. And I'd love to throw it to the wonderful Andrew, who's going to be running this game for us tonight.
All right. Well, hi. I am Andrew, that gamer Ajax on YouTube, Twitter, and TikTok. The general kind of purpose that I have is that I like highlighting other games. Don't get me wrong, I absolutely love D&D, but since I've started branching out, I wanted to kind of share that passion and kind of give you tips and tricks and guides on how to get started with a smaller system. So obviously, I think a lot of us have a very similar mission in mind when we are highlighting games like Veil of the Void. Veil of the Void has become one of my personal favorite systems, and I am so excited to be able to play with this fine group of people. Fun fact, once this recording goes live, I will actually be releasing the adventure that we were playing through that I've written myself. This will be free and available to the community as a whole. I'll be making sure that I have some additional details on how you can snag a copy of that. And hopefully this will help you get started with your own Veil of the Void adventure if it's something that you prefer or if you want to check out, really. So with that, our Retrieval Team 1224, are we ready to get started?
Yeah,
let's do it.
All right. So let's do a little recap on what's bringing your team together in the first place, shall we? So, this is a message that all of you have received. Retrieval Team 1224. We've identified a historic site on planet IG-398. The planet itself appears to be devoid of intelligent life. Our initial scans of the area indicate that whatever civilization was once here was wiped out through some kind of cataclysm. What's confusing to us are signs indicating a blending of cultures that did not interact with each other until 400 years after this event. The latest scans have been showing a significant technology surge within the site, and we'd like you to investigate what is happening. By property rights and your contract work for NanoCorp, you are within your right to secure whatever you can study. We expect a full report from yourself and your guide, Dr. Zavala, when you return. Signed, RU56. So, team, as where we are going to pick up is that you are all on a shuttle class vessel. You're making your way to this planet. You'll have a little bit of time to introduce yourselves. So please introduce Retrieval Team 1224. I know we've already talked about character names, but give us a brief description on what people are going to be seeing with their characters.
Sure. So more often than not, you can usually find R3 sort of just seated in any section of the ship that happens to be populated at the time, observing. R3 has a sort of copper, almost red visor that is, for lack of a better term, their eyes, and a very flat green, like a dark green sort of bottom faceplate where one would generally expect to see a mouth. He wears this sort of lighter teal, almost hooded vest over an open, like armored chest plate that seems to always have this very light whirring and ticking sound echoing beneath it. He also has this scarf that sort of drapes over his shoulders and hangs only a few inches off of the floor while he's seated, with more of that same sort of dark green coming down his arms until his fingers, which are fleshy and are more often than not, when not in use for less social things, just sort of crossed over themselves, resting or holding up his chin. And he just sort of observes.
Taldir would probably be in the room with what he said R3 would be doing. Taldir is a fairly old Elan, the settings equivalent of elves. He's got a white medical cloak on, a pair of glasses, and a very serious, almost exhausted expression on his face. He too, as one of the field medics for the team that he's a part of, is also usually observant to keeping an eye on the people he's working with. And if he's not reading a book, he would probably be making sure everyone on the ship is okay and the travel's going good. If he's sharing a room, I can see the two of him and R3 just staring at each other for
hours on it.
Well, continuing character introduction order. The Vengeful Consensus. I don't know much about the layout of the ship, but assuming we have some sort of do we have a cargo bay? Do we have a
this was retrofitted specifically for your retrieval team because, you know, neckbound, you need a little bit of space for your baby.
Yes. Yeah, so the Vengeful Consensus probably spends much of their time in the cargo bay, because the Vengeful Consensus is not a singular individual so much anymore, both in mind and in body. Anyone just meeting the Vengeful Consensus would probably understand them to be some sort of Quarian cyborg. Quarians being these large, imposing. They can be large or they can be quite small. They're the system's equivalent to dwarves, that they can range anywhere between, I believe, like 4 feet and 10 feet. But these large, muscle-bound, purple-skinned, purple-bluish-skinned individuals have 4 arms, usually quite well toned. And this individual, the Vengeful Consensus, looks like they, at this point, have lived quite a storied life. It's almost a 50-50 split between man and machine. One of his upper left arm had been completely removed and replaced with an oversized mechanical limb. Likewise, the lower left arm from the forearm down has been replaced. His right eye and much of his cranium going back has been replaced with a whole cyber audio suite. Likewise, has a number of different dermal platings and various integrated hoses and pipes and monitors all throughout their body. That is because the Vengeful Consensus was not always like this. They are not a Quarian cyborg. They are, in fact, 1/2 Quarian, 1/2 prototype. And we may get into more detail as to what exactly that means, but the Vengeful Consensus is a multiple organism. They are both the original Quarian and the original prototype, or neither, and instead something entirely different. But beyond this physical form that they have, they are also connected inherently, constantly, to a much larger, purely mechanical being, the original version of the prototype, the Nemesis mech. And that being a large robotic entity, for the most part, stays within the confines of the cargo bay. But this is almost ape-like. These large, massive limbs, upper limbs, one of them being replaced, and still quite large, but much more maneuverable lower limbs, with a number of different access ports and various places where things can plug in, various, what are they usually called? Hard points for extra additions. But it doesn't look necessarily complete on its own. It can function on its own. But the Vengeful Consensus is most themselves when fully integrated.
And last but not least,
In the room, almost seemingly, well, definitely seemingly small, standing at roughly 3 feet tall, is a young adult Topican, a plant being who is squat and wide and has a large mushroom cap over top of him, a large purple, almost toadstool. He wears a skull-like mask of what's a humanoid creature. However, upon closer inspection, you would notice that it is a bark instead. Draped over his shoulders is a large bear cloak, and he seems to wear mostly like really mundane leathers. Attached in a strap on his chest is what looks like a small carving dagger, almost like something you would use for a jack-o'-lantern. But what is most noticeable is the giant hammer that he is currently using to slam a rubber ball against the back hatch as he dedicates his time to aiming precisely and more or less playing his own game of baseball. His footing is strong, and you can tell that even though he is quite young, he's seen some stuff throughout his life, and that leads to all the scarring that he has throughout him of these different splinters of root that pop off of his body all over from the mushroom growths. This is Shroomy Mushy Mushkin, or Mushy as he is affectionately referred to by his friends.
And alongside the pilot that's been provided for your journey, there is Dr. Zavala, who is an Elan woman, quite a bit younger than Taldir, with kind of a dark purple skin, white hair that is pulled back into a very long braid. And she's kind of, if you think you're a sci-fi scientist, that's more or less what she is wearing. Kind of white with gold trim, kind of flowing robes. And she is kind of working on a data pad at the moment. She sets up a quick broadcast to go out to each one of you and just says, team, we're a few hours out. If you would like, I'd like to have a quick briefing before we attempt to land. Everybody meet me in the next 5 minutes, please. And she heads to the kind of communication center where you typically have your briefings before you go on these kinds of missions. As you all gather, she looks around and says, okay, you all have received the briefing for this. You have a sense of what you're getting into, but I was wondering, before we land, are there any particular questions that you would have for me? I have been kind of studying this as best I could before we left Nanocorp.
What kind of atmosphere are we dealing with?
Well, in terms of atmosphere, the planet is largely inhospitable. I'm not entirely sure how that came to be. There are traces of civilizations that were here previously, but I can tell you that the gravity is going to be a little bit more than what we're used to on other missions that we've gone on. One thing to note with this planet is that there are a variety of relatively bad lightning storms. Based on some of the initial scans that we made before we even started to really approach, it looks like as though by the time we land, there should be a relatively large storm heading in the direction of this site, probably within the next 5 or 6 hours. So we have a relatively limited window before we are going to have to get back onto the ship and get into orbit, or we're going to have to find some kind of immediate shelter. Looks around at the four of you. I'm sure that the four of you could come up with something for us to live in on short term if needed.
I assume with the layout of the planet being beyond our current grasp, that we will still be able to make do once we touch down, and if not, we will end up having to plan around it.
Well, the four of you were selected for this mission because you have a history of adaptability and survivability. So we have a lot of faith in you. I can tell you some immediate information that might be relevant, particularly to you, R3. This was actually an old prototype settlement. This was back when your people were first starting to expand into the stars. And I can tell you that from some of our initial low orbit scans that we were able to get before we came, there appeared to be some elements of Korean architecture, which doesn't really make sense because the prototype and the Koreans didn't meet for almost another 400 years. That's something that I would personally like to examine when we get down to the planet.
R3 just sort of looks over at the vengeful consensus, and he cocks his head a little bit.
Can we help you?
That remains to be seen, I suppose, but it is entirely possible that you may somehow have a bit of a upper hand here with perhaps understanding the unique ways in which this came to pass.
Perhaps. Are we expecting any sort of hostilities remaining on this planet?
Well, based on what we've been able to observe from long distance and low orbit, not particularly, but something that is concerning is the fact that we are seeing some kind of weird technology surge. There shouldn't be anything alive on the planet, but yet something is thriving there. Not entirely sure why, and that's why we are sent to investigate. Looks around at the four of you again. Now, something to keep an eye out for is that if there are prototype relics, Nanocorp would like to be able to take those and examine them to see what worked and what didn't at this colony. Anything that we can learn from our previous mistakes will actually be quite beneficial for the future. Particularly as, you know, each of our different species have spread amongst the galaxy. But there is still unexplored space, and anything that we can do to keep possible colonists or explorers safe would be beneficial and profitable.
Is there a threshold for the level of sentience you would like to acquire?
Well, it would depend. I would be looking more for more machinery and relics more than anything. Anything that could show us what went wrong with this colony, what caused it to be wiped out. That is more of an interest to me. Now, if there happen to somehow be survivors, which I don't deem likely, we should try to parlay with them and just try to get information as much as possible.
Not the simplest solution, then.
Well, I mean, if there are habitants here, I don't want to go and cause some kind of diplomatic incident. I mean, we are still technically within prototype space, but we don't want to wipe out people that may have lived longer than what we had anticipated.
Bushy raises his hand.
Yes, Mushy.
Now, Doc, I got a quick question here. Anything to do with heightened charge states here, or any sort of arcane situations? Has that been tested, or is that yet to be seen?
That's yet to be seen at this time. We are really going to be getting the first eyes on this, considering this colony's been, from what we're able to see, it's been lost for probably at least the better part of a millennia.
Troubling.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
I suppose that's why we brought you. And R3 looks over at Taldir. Better to be prepared.
Usually is.
After a few more moments and some light discussion amongst your group, kind of all get a quick little intercom buzz and just, this is your pilot speaking. We are on final approach. Everybody, better hold on to your butts. It looks like it's going to be a bumpy ride on the way down. Once you all secure yourselves in, it is in fact a rather rough descent to this planet. As you are kind of looking out some of the observation screens that you have, you see that the planet is inexplicably gray. It's the only way that you can describe it. It is dark grays and browns, and it seems to be relatively lifeless. You can see out in the distance that there is these dark rolling clouds beginning to kind of form on the horizon. As far as the eye can see, whatever storm is approaching is going to indeed be massive. But after probably the better part of an hour, slowing your descent, you do land safely. You check your equipment and you hear a soft hiss as the docking ramp lowers, and you get your first breath of air on the planet. Welcome to planet IG-398. And as you exit the craft, grab your equipment, make sure that everything is locked and loaded. For those of you using weapons, your blades are sharpened, your hammers are ready, your mech is up and moving. You take your first steps onto the planet, and you notice that there's a lot of gravel. Is the best way to describe it, and the deep crunching as your boots begin to approach what direction you assume is to be to the settlement. I would like everybody to give me an analysis or an environmental survival check, please, as you hear the low rumble of thunder in the distance.
That is 2 successes for me, Ajax.
One success for me.
Just one for me.
3 successes for me.
So Taldir and Shroomy, the two of you kind of look, and you start kind of like factoring in some equipment into some calculations. And Shroomy, I'll say that this is kind of more from like your general experience, but that storm is actually a lot closer than it looks. By your estimate, it's probably going to be here in about 4 hours.
We got a really small window then.
Right. Well, that is concerning. I'll tell the pilot to make sure that the ship is ready to go if we need to evacuate at any given moment. Well, shouldn't waste any more time then. We should get going. And you see that she kind of hoists a bag onto her back, and she sets off at a pretty rapid pace. It doesn't take you. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I look to the group and go, I was under the impression it was just the 4 of us. I didn't realize. It's fine. Never.
It does potentially present complications, but that will be determined by what we find there. I don't foresee it being an issue as long as there is nothing to challenge her well-being.
All I'm saying is when you wander around, you don't know where you're going, people get crushed. And he runs after Dr. Zavala.
Let's make sure to stay with her then and follow suit.
Speaking of people getting crushed, the Vengeful Consensus is going to fully integrate with their mech half.
Could you just give me a quick description on what that integration looks like?
Of course. Yeah, so there is this about 12 foot tall or so, almost ape-like mech unit with 2 large arms on one side and 1 large arm on the other. And the chest sort of opens up a bit, and the Vengeful Consensus sort of just steps back into it. It folds up, and a plate on the back folds forward to protect the Vengeful Consensus humanoid form, semi-organic form, as a sort of helmet area. His one oversized mechanical arm, upper left arm, fully integrates and replaces where it was originally torn off of and integrated into the Quarian's body. And this large 4-armed, almost ape-like mech just...
And as you all are making your way towards where this colony once was, something that you do notice, though, especially with the Vengeful Consensus, is that you're leaving very obvious footprints behind you. This gravel almost kind of, it's a gritty feel underneath your foot, but it almost feels like the texture seems to almost be like sand. If you have that combination of sand meets rock, that's kind of what you're dealing with. And not long after, it only takes you about 10, 15 minutes at a pretty brisk hike, you eventually see the walls of this colony appear in the near distance. You see that there is this roughly 25-foot wall that is a fortified combination of stone and preserved metals that look like they've been kind of worn over time. There's a large black gate that, as the wind is rising with this upcoming storm, you hear that as it is barely swinging in the wind. However, something that you do notice is that for something that's been here for a long time, it seems really well preserved, particularly because there are frequent storms on this planet. This doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to you.
The gate for this compound, I assume it's up? It's closed in some way?
It's like there's like a little bit of an opening. It looks to be a pretty heavy gate, though.
Large enough to get through, or do we need to open it more?
You will need to open it more, just because you're fully integrated. You are much larger than your companions. The others could probably slip through pretty easily.
I'll give a hand. Pushing that open.
Okay. Vengeful Consensus and Mushy, I would like the two of you to please give me muscle checks, please.
Right. Could I actually, because the Vengeful Consensus is not just a mere brute, could we instead, and I use the royal we, can I instead approach this from a more mechanical standpoint in finding the appropriate levers and joints areas to put pressure on that?
Yeah, I'll allow that.
Okay.
I also realized I forgot to add my 1 dice, but it doesn't do anything, so it's fine. 2 successes.
That's 2. That's another one. There we go. Put a pip on that. So that is 4 successes.
So between the two of you, you find the right place to put the pressure, Vengeful Consensus, in motion. You just start kind of like pushing at it with all of your mini might, and there is this loud grinding as the gate is pushed open, and you do proceed inside. Dr. Zavala kind of looks around at you and he says, "Well, that was a little easier than I would have anticipated. I apologize that your mech form wasn't able to get through quite as easily, but I'm glad that we were able to get in nonetheless." And as you look around, you see a variety of low buildings, all relatively well preserved, and you see that there are, in fact, a combination of Korean architectural designs and Elan, which that was something that is relatively new. Taldir, especially with how old you are and how much time you've spent within the Elan sector, this does kind of strike you a little different. There are bits of kind of almost warlike presence here, as the Elan are kind of known for their military prowess. There are some kind of spikes coming off of some of the roofs. You see that there's like heavy metal reinforcement that seems to be very similar to what Koreans would do. But along with this, there just seems to be very little in terms of decoration, kind of fitting along with the mechanical ideas of the prototype themselves.
The spikes coming off the roofs, do they look like lightning rods in function?
They would, actually.
This place looks properly fortified for the environment. Should we need to stay longer, we should be able to renovate an appropriately safe space.
Yeah, it
Indeed.
doesn't look too bad.
Now, there are a variety of buildings, and Dr. Zavala kind of looks around at you and says, "All right, well, we might be able to hide out here if the storm comes. We'll have to make sure that we signal back to our pilot to get him back up into orbit. That ship will not survive being in a storm that size. However, it might be best if we do split up and we begin kind of looking around, seeing what we can find." We're doing the thing where we're probably going to split the party.
That's always fun, though. So, but she's like, we'll cover more ground quicker that way, and unfolds the hammer.
Considering the apparent lack of imminent danger outside of the incoming storm, I see no reason why we wouldn't be more efficient in separate groups.
We will endeavor to locate the compound's command center. Perhaps power and functionality can be properly restored.
So I would like everybody to give me a quick analysis check, please. This is just kind of taking in your surroundings, and you guys are making a kind of quick map of the compound. This is how I'm ruling this one.
No successes, 2 failures.
Okay.
5 successes, and 2 of them are 6s.
4 successes, 1 fail. 2 is a failure, right?
Yes, 2 is a failure.
Then yeah, 4 successes, 1 failure.
2 successes.
Okay, so we'll say that Mushy, like the kind of tracking things is not particularly your forte, and
So
the general
boring.
consensus, you're just kind of looking around and observing, kind of starting to take things in. However, R3 and Taldir, the two of you are able to work with Dr. Zavala, and you actually are able to like make a very quick hollow map. And based on some of the scans and combining all of your general knowledge of these different cultures, you think that there are a few noticeable buildings that you'll be able to identify. There seems to be some kind of mess hall. There is a communications tower that is directly in the center of the colony. There seems to be an armory, and then there's a variety of residence structures. So I would like to ask you, team, how would you like to proceed?
Communications building. Is there any chance that we can use it to get in contact with the shuttle to let them know to be ready to head out if we need to stay here?
It's certainly possible. There seems to be a low hum of energy kind of in this area. There are some lights that are beginning to kind of like flicker as things begin to darken as the storm is approaching on the horizon.
One of the quickest ways we can check if there are people around here is if we go to the mess hall.
That is a good point. I suggest that we also attempt to take a walk through the residential homes to see if there is anything there that might help explain the existence of these people in a time before we expected them.
Anything from you, Vengeful Consensus? Any of you?
Andrew, you said there was a communication center, but there didn't look to be like any sort of central administrative or
just from the observations, that would actually probably be where like admin duties would have been distributed.
the communications area
Yeah.
as well. Taldir, do you require our assistance, or should we secure the armory?
Check the armory. Yes. I'll see what I can do in the communication center. See what's been left there, and if we can make use of it.
If you are inefficient in this task, do request our assistance.
Of course. Yeah, it's all.
And Dr. Zavala turns to Taldir. Would you mind if I join you? If I'm able to research any of their data logs, maybe we can find a little bit more on what happened here.
Sounds like a good plan. And he heads on inside the communication center.
Okay. So everybody splits up and goes their separate ways. I'm just going to roll a quick dice to determine who we are going to follow first.
Andrew,
Okay.
I also want to reach out real quick, just for listeners. One of the Veil mechanics is that we do have communicators, and those don't seem to be malfunctioning at all at the
No.
moment.
No,
Okay.
not at the moment, no.
Okay.
Okay. So we are actually going to start by following Mushy. And Mushy, you said that you were going to the mess hall, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mushy moves his way towards the mess hall. What do I see?
Okay. So you see that this is a relatively low building. It's no more than about 10 feet tall. You just looking at you like, oh, Vengeful Consensus would probably have a little bit of difficulty getting even like through this building in the first place. And as you push the door open, it's in a very serious state of disrepair. There are heavy amounts of dust that are spotted throughout the interior, and nothing really seems to have been disturbed like in quite some time. However, I would ask you to give me an observation check, please.
Okay. Let's see what we got here. 1 success.
Okay. Yeah, as you are kind of looking around, you hear this low thrum of energy coming from somewhere, but you can't really pinpoint where it is. And as you are making your way around, you're taking your time, and you catch a couple of footprints in a far corner towards the back of the hall.
Kind of like towards where the kitchen would be.
Kind of there's like a back entrance, it seems, that kind of leads out a separate door, and there seem to be a couple of footprints just leaving.
Gonna go over the communicator and say, hey, we got some footprints here, but the rest of the place is pretty dusty. I'm gonna keep track of that. It's going towards the back end of the mess hall.
Please be careful.
And as you're kind of looking around, you start, making your way through the kitchen, and there's really not a whole lot here. And the place seems to be undisturbed. However, you are able to find a little container of meta water.
Okay.
So you can add that to your inventory.
Beauty.
And for viewers, if you're not familiar with Veil of the Void, meta water is a healing thing that you use outside of combat. You can just use it to kind of boost yourself back up with a pretty good amount of health, actually.
Yeah. It's like 18, isn't it? It's like significant.
Yeah, it's like I thought it was like 15 or 20.
Yeah, it's like a lot.
Wow.
Yeah, 25 HP. Yep. Once.
Pretty good.
And as you are kind of like rifling through and you find this and you're like, oh, score, and you start to put it into your bag, you hear this very soft coming over your communicator. Help me. And then it's gone.
Really quick over the cons, I'll go. Which one of you? I need more information than that.
I'm
Coming again.
sorry. What is it that you are referring to?
I picked up a signal saying, help me, real quick, just for a second there. I'm going to wander further away from here, see if I can get a stronger connection. Maybe they're just outside of range.
Can anyone confirm if they sent that message?
I can confirm that it did not come from me. Consensus?
Are you certain your organic mind is not simply malfunctioning in this place?
Yeah, I'm sure.
It is not a poor question to ask. Considering the amount of information we don't have, it is entirely possible that the organic composition that makes up your mind is affected perhaps by things we are unaware of.
All right, I know it's surrounded by a bunch of big brain boys, but like there's footprints here. Somebody just asked for help. I'm just going to do a little wander around, see if I pick something up.
Please don't wander too far off from the settlement.
No, I'll be in the settlement. I'm not leaving the settlement.
All right.
I'll probably actually wander closer towards the residential area. Just see if I pick something up.
If you would like, when I have finished my walkthrough, I will meet up with you. And if you have not found any pertinent information at that point, we can investigate together.
Sounds great.
We were not subtle with our arrival.
No.
If there was anyone here in need of assistance, they would have properly requested it sooner. If what you hear is indeed real, I suggest approaching with caution.
I'll be careful.
So with that, we're actually going to cut over to Taldir and Dr. Zavala as you are approaching the communications tower. The doors you're able to get open pretty easily between the two of you. I would like you to give me a quick programming or mechanics check, just to see if you can bring some of these ancient computers back to life. You know that there's a bit of a power source coming from somewhere. You just have to see if there's enough to work with here.
I'll do programming. I think that's just a straight 6 since I don't have any skill points in that.
Okay.
Three successes and 1 failure.
You said that was 3 successes?
3 successes.
Perfect. That is actually exactly what you needed on this. So as you pull these logs, they kind of hum to life very, very dimly. You have to actually like rub off like a lot of dust that's covering these monitors, and there's this kind of eerie blue glow that then begins to consume the room. These are actually written in Datalith. Are you able to? Is this a language that you're familiar with?
No, I believe I just have common and what is the elf equivalent?
It's Elenon.
Elenon, yes.
Okay.
Those are the two.
The Dr. Zavala kind of like leans over and says, "Hang on, I've spent some time. I can actually translate some of this. Give me some time. I'm going to need a little bit to start kind of going through these logs."
Take your
and
time.
There's a few minutes of almost an uncomfortable silence as she's kind of tapping away on these keyboards, and they're quite loud keyboards. However, after a moment, she says, "Well, that's interesting. These logs are older than I'd anticipated. They're almost 1,400 years old. These are not long actually after the previous war against the faces of evil. Well, hang on, let me see what I have been able to find." And she's also like sending some data out to you, so that way you'll be able to start reading through some of these reports as well. Let's see, we have one here that just says there's been some confusion among our ranks as of late. The past few weeks have been tense. Ever since art was installed, there have been reports of machinery shorting out, and some of the workers have been reporting lower performance readings than normal. We'll continue to monitor to ensure that there's no additional planetary interference. Signed, LR5. It's my understanding of the prototype structure is that would probably be lead researcher would be my general understanding. Hang on. Let me see if I can send one of these reports over to you. Perhaps you can start working on reading through some of these before I get a chance to do so. I'm going to go ahead and post this on the Roll20 log. So Taldir, you are free to begin reading through these as well, if you'd like.
Is this being shared amongst the group?
If you all would like, Zavala can definitely send copies to everybody's communicators. Just I have them kind of working like cell phones, where it's you get both voice and text.
Those unlimited minutes really coming in handy.
Mm-hmm. So if I could get somebody to read those out loud, actually, I would really appreciate that as your GM.
Sure. Art has uncovered something peculiar about this planet. Apparently, its overall makeup can potentially be harmful to us prototyped after long periods of time. I am certainly glad we were able to get them installed in the research quarters and away from the storms, which have been increasing in severity since we originally arrived 4 months ago. The inclement weather is concerning. We will have Art run diagnostics about how to best reinforce the colony to ensure our safety until we can figure out how to neutralize the ongoing effects of the planet itself. Disturbing reports and predictions from art. Something out there is making the storms here worse. And I can't help but worry that our time here has been a waste. We are beginning to look at evacuating, but in more disturbing news, LR5 has gone missing, along with several other workers. W223 has complained of seeing things and optical impairment, but they are now missing as well. We are trying to find everyone we can.
And all of you have access to this information as it's being shared out.
Okay. Considering this information, perhaps Consensus and myself were a bit abrupt in our assessment, and I offer you a respectful apology, Mushkin.
Apology accepted. He's got like his communicator up in the air, just like listening.
So we should be careful. Something has the ability to affect the storms of this planet. We should definitely take caution. Be careful not to split up too much.
And with that, we'll shift over focus to the vengeful consensus. Vengeful consensus, you find the armory is kind of located in the back corner of this colony. And you see that the door to this has been sealed shut. Your assumption would be that you would need to either pry or cut it open to be able to get inside.
Okay, not a problem. I will dismount from one of the hard points of my suit, a great chain blade. Just start cutting into it.
And we'll say that there's enough noise that you hear this echoing cut, like coming from within. And I'm sure that the four of you have worked together enough that you know that this is a way to definitely get a door open. It takes you probably the better part of a couple of minutes, but after a while, you're able to kind of like, you wait for the metal to cool, you kind of grab and you start prying, and you're able to get your way in. Inside, it is completely dark. Would your mech form kind of have lights that you could like shine into the area?
I would imagine so.
Okay. So you activate those, and what you see on the inside is just that it's mostly defunct. There are old weapons here. It seems to be mostly kind of archaic by today's standards. However, you are able to find that there are a few rounds of armor-piercing ammunition, and there appear to be several ancient prototype corpses that are strewn about. Could I get you to give me a medicament check, please?
A medicament check. Because these are, assuming we're talking about the prototypes here, would a mechanics check also be valid?
Yeah, okay. I'll say that, and also because you are half prototype, I would say go ahead and you can have an auto hit die on that.
Okay. I will set a 6 over here. All right. Because my mechanics is way better. That is 5 plus 2 plus another 1. I'm going to use, because I have 3 skill points in this, I'm going to re-roll that roll.
Okay.
No 1s or 6s in there. That's even more nothing. Wow. Okay, well, I have a pip to put on that. Remind me, actually, for a critical failure, is that just 1s or 1s and 2s? I believe it's 1s and 2s.
It is 1s and 2s.
Yeah. So that is a... Actually, you know what? instead of turning a 4 to a 5, I'm going to turn one of these 2s into a 3, because that's 4 failures and then only my auto hit. I got a whole bunch of nothing.
Oh
Oh,
no.
oh no. Okay, well, you're looking around at these corpses and you're not able to determine how long they've been here or what caused their demise. However, as you do look back, I mean, the armor itself is not particularly in the best condition, really, but you look back and you see that there's this old ancient blowtorch that was left on the inside.
Did the door look sealed from the inside?
It did. It's part of the reason why it was so difficult to get open and you had to forcibly cut your way in.
I rolled 8 dice there too.
Oh no.
I'm supposed to be real good at mechanics. Anyway. Okay. So I get no information from these things. I assume they all look like non-combat oriented prototype units.
Some of them do actually have what appears to be at least the older equivalent of heavier armor.
Okay.
Some of them seem to be like they would have been kind of guards. I mean, when you have a colony like this, you need to have somebody that can keep people safe if there does happen to be external life that is going to be an issue for you. Some of them seem like they might have been trained a little bit better, but there are also what appear to be just be non-combatants in here.
Since I can't get any read off of these bodies, can I instead look around at the interior and see if I see any signs of combat that way? Weapons fire, claw marks on the walls, things tipped over and disturbed.
I'm actually gonna say no, just because this place has been abandoned for 1,400 years, and there doesn't appear to be any kind of initial scarring or anything like that. But as you are looking around, though, you see this kind of like out of the corner of your eye. It seems like there's somebody else in the room with you, and you go to look, and they're gone. And as you're looking, the prototype part of you is screaming that something's wrong.
I'll go over comms. It seems, in fact, there is some sort of disturbance to prototype entities at this planet. We'll put in for a level 3 diagnostic. R3, I would caution you even further. You lack the organic compounds we can compensate with.
May I ask you what issues you've run into in case it matches up with the logs that we've received?
Peripheral vision glitches.
I do appreciate the insight and will ensure to tread lightly as I move.
We have also found a number of prototype corpses. They are too far. They are too far eroded for any complete analysis. However, they were locked within the armory. Perhaps they simply ran out of power.
Let's just take a look at them if you wish. If you can, please wait there. I'll be there in a second.
I will secure the space.
This was the sound I heard. Were they locked in from the inside or the outside?
From within.
Interesting.
Apparently, there is something without that these units feared. It could, however, have been entirely in their minds.
I wonder if it was something in their minds or the storm that they were trying to get away from. Or perhaps a mixture of the two. Here he is.
And last but not least, we'll cut over to R3. You make your way to a low set of buildings. Being a prototype yourself, you know that they don't require a whole lot of space, and they don't really require a whole lot in terms of their needs outside of, general kind of chance to recharge every few days. And as you begin working your way through this set of buildings, you think that there probably wouldn't have been more than 40, 50 people living here at any given time. And the entire area is ransacked. Looks as though there might have been fighting here a long, long time ago. You do come across a couple of corpses that are strewn about. One is even pinned to a wall by basically, essentially like this universe's version of rebar. And as you are looking around, you get the sense that somebody's watching you. And as you turn to observe, you see what appear to be these almost like spectral figures of prototype, very glitchy, almost as though you're seeing them in static. You see them fighting, and one lifts the other and pins it to the wall.
This is quite troubling. I'm gonna use my comm and contact them and go, I have found more corpses here, and I believe experiencing my own visual glitches as well. Mushkin, what is your position?
I'm getting inbound. Do you need me to hurry it on over there?
I think perhaps that would be for the best, to ensure that I can confirm what it is that I experience with your visuals, and in doing so, perhaps be able to come up with a more accurate depiction of what is and what is the result of the impact of this storm and whatever else may be causing this.
Roger. Put away my comm and start making my way towards release.
It only takes you a couple minutes to get there, and as Mushy is kind of pushing open the door and coming in, Release, you hear a voice kind of whispered into your ear. Set me free, please.
Release immediately just sort of pivots in the direction of wherever it seems like that voice is coming from. And a slot on the side of his body pops open, but nothing comes out of it.
Then Moshi, you witness this as you enter the room.
You okay there, Chief?
I am experiencing troubling visual and auditory effects. Did you hear anything as you were entering?
No, right?
No.
Not at all. What? Tell me about it, though.
It was asking for, ironically, release.
Okay. Do I see this thing that's pinned against the wall too, or like?
You see, it would basically be like an ancient body pinned to the wall. You do see that.
Okay.
You
Okay.
see this as well, yes?
Well, yes, I see the prototype pinned to the wall. Yes.
Good. Troubling things have happened here. Something caused them to perhaps turn on themselves.
Hmm.
Though again, my judgment is questionable at best presently.
Well, you said they were asking for release. I'm guessing they don't know your name. And we only have one friend with us right now. How big is this rebar that's sticking out of this thing? Like,
If we're gonna put a size to it, it's probably about as big as you are. Granted, it's relatively narrow. I mean, you're only looking like maybe an inch in diameter, but about 3 feet long.
and what's the material that the building's made out of?
This building is primarily metal with some stone reinforcement on the outside.
Look at the body. Look at the bar. The way I see it, we have two options here. I try and hammer this through, or we slide it off, and at least, the very least, we can get a better look at this thing. So,
Well, I am not one to deny you an opportunity to put your hammer to use. That would just be selfish, I believe. No?
I'm okay. Sure. I'm gonna try and just like crack this hammer, kind of like a nail. I'm basically trying to drive this thing through it enough that it'll loosen up. I'm sure it's rusted down.
Okay.
Into one another.
Could you remind me again how many what's your your power score?
7.
Oh yeah. It takes you a few good whacks. And every time there's just this resounding clang, clang, and like you're smacking into it, and you're feeling the reverberations like through your hammer. Like this is definitely making your hand go a little numb because you're basically having to drive this through metal and stone. But after probably a good 4 or 5 good swings, you've actually like punched it through the building. And if anybody is like observing from the outside, they do actually see this rebar just start kind of like eventually just poking through. And you are able to actually, there's enough that you think that you can get this body and take it off of the wall.
Yeah, I'll set them off, and then afterwards I go, it probably would have been a lot faster and quieter if I just used the plasma blade to cut it and slip them off, but
Likely, but I do not believe there's anything that we need to worry about hearing us, at least as far as we know.
Have hostiles been identified?
The hostile bar has been dealt with.
Do not worry, it was of
Acknowledged.
no true threat to us.
Okay, R3. Any does this help your head at all?
At this time, when you pull the body off of the wall and you lay it down, you see what appears to be this very staticky prototype just sitting in roughly the same position and just staring at you.
I'm going to reach out towards it.
It does not respond or react.
I am going to attempt to put my hand on its head.
Just phases right through.
I believe you are dead.
Mushy just looks up confused.
Can you describe to me what it is that you are presently seeing, Mushy?
Seeing a dead prototype on the ground.
I believe what I am seeing is just another effect of whatever it is that has driven them to the unfortunate end that they have found, though it is concerning that it is still a issue so many years later. I believe perhaps it would be best if we continued to look around, unless you would like to inspect the body itself. I do not believe I would be very effective at doing so.
I mean, yeah, we can do that. We can. I mean, I'm sure that somebody's got. It's got no power to it, right? Like,
If what you are seeing is accurate and what I am seeing is not, then yes, that is correct. However, to myself, it seems as though it is watching me.
spooky.
Indeed.
Oh, maybe you were the one asking for help, and I'm just gonna like drop my communicator on its chest and just like, all right, talk to us.
There's a moment of silence,
Huh?
and then after a moment, R3, you see this. You see that this prototype opens its mouth, and then there just begins to be this buzz of constant static getting louder and louder and louder coming through the communicator.
The moment that begins, there's this sort of flash of like blue and green light that sort of extends from out of that open slot on R3, and they are, as the flash sort of subsides, they are holding a rifle at the corpse.
Just scoop up the communicator. Is it still going on?
Oh, it absolutely is, and you can hear it.
Can I hear it through the communicator? Or
That's where the sound is coming from.
Is that local to them, or is it on all frequencies?
We're gonna say all frequencies.
Upon hearing this noise, you would probably rush to where the two of them are.
Is your equipment malfunctioning?
That
hold
is
the
a
button. It's just more static, I'm guessing.
that is from kid answer.
And R3, after this goes on for what feels like minutes, it's realistic, but probably about 30 seconds. So you see that its face begins to mold and shape and shift to match yours.
That is,
And then there's one last extremely loud blast of static, and then it disappears.
If I were to take that static and run it through an audio processor and kind of play with the levels, tone it down, stretch it out, whatever it may be, could I play with the frequencies and whatnot until see if I could find anything in that static, see if there was an actual transmission in there?
Sure. I would say to give me, in that case, give me either a mentality-based analysis check or give me a programming check, please.
Definitely gonna go programming. All right. I get an auto hit in programming. Okay, so 5 for mentality, an extra die for 2 skill points. And just to make sure, would this count as, I have tech expert, so gain an extra bonus die on knowledge, programming, or mechanics checks when operating unfamiliar technology. Would this, probably not. I'm putting the noise through my own technology.
Just because I like the idea of you getting another die, I'm in favor of it just because you're trying to identify something unknown right now.
Okay.
How does that sound?
Sure. Well, I assume this because we've determined that these units are what, like 1,000 years old or more.
About 1400. Yeah.
1400. Yeah. So that could certainly be unfamiliar technology from the source at the very least. All right. Apparently, I need to trade out my dice because they are not being my friends today.
Oh no.
I get another pip here. So that is 3 successes.
Okay. So It takes you a bit of fiddling while everybody else is reconvening where Release and Mushy are. And as you're running this through over and over and over and over and over again, you think that you're able to pick up on it. It starts softly and then gets louder and louder and louder and louder, and it's just one phrase that is repeating over and over, and it is "Let me out, let me out, let me out."
After analysis of that transmission, encoded deep within it was a request multiple times over to be released, to let it out. Perhaps we should look for the source of these transmissions. Taldir, if you are no longer on your way here, we grow tired of this place. We will head to the communication center and endeavor to identify the source of these transmissions.
He should have been heading towards machine release.
Residential, yeah.
Yeah.
Did the science officer follow along with me, or?
No, Dr. Zavala stayed at the communication center. She said that she had a few more things that she was wanting to try finding out and looking over.
All right. I guess I meet up with the two of them?
Yes.
All right. All right. Do I see the corpse on the ground?
You do.
All right. Do we want to stay here longer, or do we want to take our leave and report on what we found alone?
Is it possible that what is happening here is... No, perhaps not.
No, speak it up. Tell us what are you thinking?
Well, there are two thoughts that cross my mind as to what may be happening here. One is a technological malfunction on a deeper level that has to do with the way that we tend to store our, I suppose some people would call them souls, ourselves. But another possibility would be something that defies the basic mechanical laws and would fall more under the concept of the arcane. And it is perhaps a route worth considering here, as this is quite strange and does not seem to follow any of the general rules of operation.
I don't know. If this was ether, we'd probably be able to see it a little bit clearer. And by we, I mean myself and Taldir. It's totally possible. Just the necromancers that I've known, it's not how it worked. Which is why this is so concerning, if that's the case.
It does create more of a concern. Perhaps the largest gap in my knowledge. But then perhaps it would make sense for us to regroup with the consensus and the doctor at the communications hub and see if they have had any luck locating any sources and decide what our next move should be. This is disturbing, I suppose, is the most appropriate word for it, and exceptionally frustrating, as it cannot be solved with death.
Let's head back to the officer then.
You guys go on ahead. I'll be like 3 seconds.
No less. And he heads off.
I put the communicator in its hand and I'm like, all right, sorry about this program, body, whoever you are. I'm sure you were great in life and whatnot, but you're really freaking out my crew. So I'm just gonna aim at your central parts here and just I'll take the hammer and just swing it down onto whatever the main bits of this prototype would be. Just kind of squish all those mechanical bits.
Yeah,
and
that won't
it
make
is old and brittle. It smashes easily.
that won't
Pick
make
up.
the robot ghost unhappy. No.
I don't know. It's just like you guys would definitely hear like the thunk too. Clips his transmitter back to the bear pelt, and as he walks by you, he kind of runs up, he like taps at your leg, and he goes, "Shouldn't have to worry about anywhere where a soul's stored anymore," and jogs on back to the communication tower.
Well, perhaps we will see if death was a solution.
As you all reconvene, you kind of start you as a collective, you kind of pour over some of these terminals, and you start pulling up a little bit more information. This was, in fact, this was an initial colony. There's some basic information about weather reports and how sustainable is this colony really. The main reason they were here in the first place was that there was a valuable mineral at one point, but it seems that the leads that they had were kind of old, and that unfortunately it seems like the planet itself has been mostly depleted. At this given time, it is almost entirely dead. There does not seem to be much organic life, and if there is, it has to be very capable of surviving the lightning storms and would be largely airborne more than anything. However, as you are all pouring through this information, you are also able to pull up some scans of the colony with the original designs, and you notice that there happens to be an underground research center. Back towards the entrance of it is back towards the end of the colony, and you may have missed it because it seemed as though there were some sealed doors. But Dr. Zavala kind of like taps the hologram of that area. Well, I think that if we're going to want answers, this seems to be the best bet.
How much time has passed?
Through your entire exploration, I want to say it's probably been the better part of an hour and a half.
Depending on how long it takes to get it. Can I take a look at the storm again to see if we're still on time?
You kind of like plug in like some quick calculations on whatever device you would have, and just like doing some scans, it looks you've probably got the better part of maybe about 3 hours now.
Okay, it's on course.
It's like it's still on course. It's 2.5, 3 hours away.
Okay.
Did we have to travel? Did it take any time to get to this part of the settlement from the shuttle, or?
It took you about 15 minutes at a brisk march. If you're running, you could probably cut that time down in half easy.
Okay.
Well, most of them. Not entirely sure about Taldir because you're what, 2,000 years old, something like that.
He's up there. A young 600.
Oh, okay. But well, look, I know that time is beginning to run a bit short. I suppose what is the idea that you have here? Should we try to bunker down, or I would personally like to try to explore this. I mean, it doesn't seem like the research center itself is overly large. We could probably just pull whatever data is down there, and we could probably get out of here before the storm happens.
Have you detected any active transmissions?
Other than the mishaps that seem to be going on with some of your communications, no, not really. I'm a little concerned with the fact that there's still power here, and I'm wondering if the answers would be in that research center.
Bunkering down
Most assuredly.
Bunkering down did not seem to work out very well for those before us. Perhaps it would be best if we pushed pushed onwards and attempted to resolve our business here so that we could make our way out.
Yeah, I think we need to move as quickly and cautiously as we can. If what R3's been seeing is true, I like not having rebarb through my chest.
Of stone.
It's just I don't want to be the next people that they find here. So I think we move fast. We got about 3 hours.
Then we should move.
The consensus, have you seen anything else?
Funny that you mentioned that because consensus, as you begin to move, you do see what appear to almost be these ghosts, almost like walking alongside you, kind of shambling almost in the same direction that you're beginning to move towards that research center.
Continued visual glitches.
Could you describe these?
Entities
look-
walking beside.
And they seem to almost be that kind of staticky, like remnant of a prototype.
I have always meant to ask you, is your perception or processing of things done through one mind, or is there two separate processes going at the same time for your optical, auditorial, or other inputs?
We are in consensus.
Vengefully.
Interesting.
All input, output, and throughput goes entirely between you would identify as two separate processes. However, they are not dissimilar from perhaps the two hemispheres of most humanoid brains, or a multifocal processing unit of your own positronic makeup. Our two psyche and synaptic systems had to be fully incorporated.
Do keep us up to date on the glitches that you experience so that we can perhaps find the difference in progress for yours and mine.
These, I believe, are directing towards the research center.
We have yet to ask ourselves if it is prudent to attempt to aid in what these, I suppose, with a lack of a better term, I will call spirits, are requesting of us.
That is our employer's prerogative.
Yeah, we're not paid for that.
As long as we get our payment.
We are here in search of technological relics.
Yes.
The two seem related. It is possible these are merely the digitized consciences of those who have fallen, caught within some sort of feedback transmission, augmented by the electronic and ionization effects within the atmosphere.
A concept I had suggested to our associates.
Then let us proceed.
Taldir,
And-
you're not going to be that stuffy to me, are you? You're not going to ask me about my positronic brain, are you?
You do not possess a positronic brain.
No, that's just mean.
No, it is a function of biology.
This is what I'm getting at, Taldir. walks behind the mech.
Yeah, you and your fleshy bits.
Have we seen any evidence of, besides architecturally, any evidence of Corians or Elan here?
No.
Okay. Have what is Mushy's proper name?
Shroomy.
Shroom, of course. Shroomy. I can. It's so difficult to say. Shroomy, in the mess hall, did you detect any sort of residual organic substances that could feed non-mechanized units?
I don't think so.
Curious.
No, I didn't.
R3, would prototype units require sustenance in that form? Theoretically, they should only need power, in which this planet appears to provide in abundance.
Indeed. I cannot see a reason why you would have to have anything else.
Then where are the organics or their remains?
This is an incredibly good question.
You also got to remember too that there's next to no flora or fauna here. I've heard that there might be some airborne stuff, but that would have to either be very big or very small to survive those storms. Just like pause for a second. Listen, we're on a planet that has next to no civilization. I want you to listen for any animals.
It is silent.
Not a whistle of wind.
Oh no, there's a lot of wind starting.
Oh, well,
yeah,
like
because
outside of the
incoming storm.
Yeah,
but that's the only thing you can hear.
Mm-hmm. Now it makes sense usually for animals to start taking off when a storm's coming, but usually we should have heard something small, seen some sort of remnant. So if there is anything, it would be somewhere safe, maybe underground. My guess is that if we're going to find some of these folks, it'll be whatever's left over in the research facility.
Indeed.
I suppose this does make the most sense.
After a few minutes, you, as a group, make your way towards what's been identified as the doors of this research center, and they do appear to be sealed and locked.
Pull out my chain blade again.
Now there is also, I do want to note that there is what appears to be a data pad that is like fluttering with some power. So I'm going to give you guys the option that you can either try to brute force your way through, or if you'd like, you can attempt a programming check to kind of like more or less hack this door open.
I have in my inventory hacking programs. Would I be able to use one of those here?
You would.
Then I would.
Also, fun fact, as a prototype, you can automatically hack something once per day.
Oh yeah. Well, then I'm going to go with that instead.
Okay. So you see that the Vengeful Consensus pulls out this great chain blade and starts to rev it up, and Arthur, you like hold your hand and just no, hang on. We'll do this in a more civilized manner.
I don't think Arthur wouldn't even say anything. He's just going to walk past and just sort of.
And for you, this is, this would basically be like kind of taking apart a primitive lock for you. And you just very quickly just flutter through. You're familiar with the inner workings of this. And after a brief moment, there's a ding, and then the doors screech as they begin to open.
Not everything requires that level of violence. It took me a while to understand that.
My teachers told me a whole lot about violent bears and things like that. So I barely know how to use datapad. I grew up on Nefterac a little bit.
The datapad was in questionable repair. However, this blade is not. It seemed most efficient.
But As I am learning in my time here, efficiency is not, strangely, always the appropriate route to take.
I don't get it. We got a time crunch here. I mean, that was faster, so I'm not going to complain, but
And Zavala is just like, yes, I'm with Shroomy. I'm quite interested to see what's inside this research center. So, shall we proceed?
Indeed.
And as you all enter Taldir, you notice as everybody else walks past that there's gonna be a couple pairs of footprints leading into the research center.
How big are they?
Humanoid sized.
Do they seem recent or?
Give me an observation check, please.
One to succeed. This is not great. 2 failures and 4 success.
Your guess, these are surprisingly fresh. They've been there for definitely been there for a few days. But this place is supposed to have been abandoned.
Someone has been here very recently.
What are these footprints in? Are they outside in the storm? Are they inside the facility?
They're like inside. It's like outside, like on the colony, because you remember I mentioned that it's kind of like gravelly texture.
Mm-hmm.
It's leading in, but nothing appears to be coming out.
So what did they track in? Are they tracking in?
Well, this is
dirt,
like
mud,
it's
blood?
like this is like as Taldir is like starting to go in, just like the quick like glance down and notice that there are like footprints leading like just like into like the metal surface, and then that's where they disappear. It's as though they're like walking inside, and then they just are gone.
There's indents in this sand like gravel.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And our footsteps are remaining pretty.
Yeah, yours are super fresh.
Okay.
Do we know if there has been any activity surrounding the planet? Do we know if anyone has flown in since we began to plot our course here?
Well, I can tell you just as the Nanocorp representative here that they shouldn't. Nanocorp kind of owns a large portion of prototype space, and considering that's where we are, nobody else should be able to have access to this site other than us. Now, if they are definitely here illegally and they're trespassing, and I would recommend that we either secure them or remove them forcefully.
That does seem to be the most prudent course of action. But first, I suppose we will have to wait to see who they are and where they are.
Well, if a fight is to break out, I'm going to tell you that I am a scientist. I am not equipped for combat. I'll leave that to the 4 of you.
Sounds like a plan, boss.
And as you are proceeding to make your way into this research center, you notice that the interior walls have definitely survived better than the remainder of the colony. There's a lot of heavy reinforcing, and you can see that there are some interesting patches of kind of Korean influence in their structure. It seems as though these were kind of reinforced at a later date, it seems, compared to when they were initially built. And an interesting aspect that you are able to see is that there almost seems to be like flashes of code coming along the walls. There are regular soft pulses of blue light, and the interior halls are relatively dim. As you guys are kind of looking around, you see that there are some kind of corner offices as you are making your way into the center, that have a couple of monitors that are kind of like flashing in that same blue light. But other than that, most of the light is coming from a large chamber further down the hallway, probably we're going to use probably say a good like 50 feet away. And this is a wide hall. Consensus, you're actually able to walk in here quite easily. It's probably a good 15, 20 feet tall.
These terminals along the wall, are we talking like Star Trek terminals down the hallway, or are we talking like there's actual computer stations set up?
It's kind of like computer stations that are in like little offices, like kind of like you'd have to like make your way into them if you wanted to try checking any of those out. But there are also just like a couple like little like projectors like screens, and that's kind of where you're seeing like these bits of code kind of come like flying past.
But there is clearly more light coming from a central chamber ahead.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Consensus will simply proceed.
Okay. And as you guys make your way into this larger chamber, it is actually, you know what? I will give you a visual representation. You check roll 20, please.
Ellie, that's big.
So you enter in this chamber, and you see that there is this large round metal object at the very end. There are pillars that are supporting this this structure, and there is this kind of observation railing that you can. There are a couple of like old ladders that can make their way up. They're probably about 10 feet in the air or so. Vengeful Consensus, how tall did you say that like your mech form is? Is it like that 10, 12 feet tall?
It's about 12 feet, yeah.
Okay, yeah, you will actually have to like actively like duck under this observation rail to be able to get under it. And as you proceed, you hear from this variety of speakers around the area in a booming voice. Have you come to set me free? And that is where we are going to go ahead and end this session. So this is, you guys made your way into the research center. This is where you guys are observing the dead planet and making your way, trying to figure out what's going on around here. But that's where we're going to go ahead and call this episode. I'm going to go ahead and pass on over to Drake, who I think has some outro announcements, and then we can probably go about doing our plugs before the next episode comes out.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Yeah, I hope everyone enjoyed. This was a lot of fun. Thank you everyone for hanging out, sticking around, and watching the episode with us and interacting in chat. Thank you for all of the support and assistance that we've had over the last just about coming up on 2 months at this point, and for joining us for this and other games. I'm, Drake, aka Lion. You can find me at the Lion Knight on all social media and on Twitch, which I guess you still know because you're still here. So I won't take up any time, and I'm just gonna pass it on to everyone else. I figure we'll go in the reverse order this time, taking a page from Jack's book, and start with who we ended with last time. So actually, Andrew, if you'd like to go first.
All right. Well, I am Andrew. I've been your Galaxy Master for this game so far. I am That Gamer Ajax on YouTube, Twitter, TikTok. I'm working on kind of building out my own Discord server to run more games. But I am there to kind of help introduce people with guides, tips, and tricks and whatnot into a variety of tabletop games that Dungeons and Dragons and smaller indie titles, just because that's what I happen to like. I just want to help you be the best possible player or game master out there. So yeah, check me out if you've been enjoying it. Really appreciate the support.
All right, I guess I'm up next then. Hey everybody, I'm Zach, and I run a podcast called Scheduled for Launch, where I talk to indie creators about all the cool stuff that they're making, including tabletop role-playing games, comics, and even some music from time to time. It's a really great way to discover some new projects and kind of get invested in some really cool, especially indie tabletop games. I know that I've sunk way more money than I probably should have because of them, but you can find me on all major podcasting apps, and you can follow me on Twitter at Schedule for Launch. And I'll pass it on over to Jack.
Yes, hello. I'm Jack. You may know me from my own channel, twitch.tv/The People's Ascension. We are also on YouTube, perhaps at this point, youtube.com/The People's Ascension. We're real close to that vanity title. So if we're not there yet, check it out. It might be something you like. And if you do, hit whatever button is helpful there and help me about. You might also be able to find me on TikTok. We'll see if I've gotten that going at this point. But what I am doing currently right now, as in the future, we are doing season 4 of RPGs Uncovered. This is a series dedicated to showing just how quick and easy it can be to learn a new TTRPG. And that includes bite-sized tutorials, this whole introductory stream as to, if the game is for you, going over what the rules, tools, and themes of the game is, and most significantly, a demo play mini-series to actually show how the game plays, both from a GM standpoint and a player standpoint and a storytelling standpoint. And we go deep into how to do all of those various different things, either on stream or in separate YouTube videos or in separate Patreon like outro shows and stuff like that. So you can find me over on all of those spaces. I'm sure there's going to be links somewhere about here. I've had a blast today, and I can't wait for session 2. But I will hand it over to Jeff.
Not much to say. I'm mostly just helping out with Lion Stream. So pass on the line to see what we have going for us.
And I very much appreciate you doing that. Yeah, one last time, I had a lot of fun. Thank you so much for being here. For y'all, thank you to everyone watching. All of the links and stuff will be in chat. It will be there and available, and you should absolutely check out all of these people's amazing stuff, because it is amazing, and I'm not just saying that. So we'll see you back here next week for the thrilling conclusion of Veil of the Void, the Dead Planet. But for now, enjoy this tale from the table. Have a good night.